Hello guys and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be going over all of Violet's abilities and giving my first impressions. So this is the second time I'm recording this because the first time I recorded it the voice did not get recorded, which is very annoying. So I'm going to quickly do a quick overview because I feel like I know what she's about now, because I literally read through her entire kit and went into depth. But let's just quickly go into her core ability. Firstly, she's a support, if you didn't already know that. She's got a at the start of each combat, she gives basically minus 40% critical damage debuff, which is decent. It's a pretty tankish ability, and it is pretty weird, but it does the job at the end of the day. Heavy attacks inflict a shock, dealing 3% damage per second, which would work well with Wally, I'm assuming, because if you defeat an enemy with a shock, and Wally gains a junk buff, which is going to be amazing for his armor gain. So there could be some sort of a synergy there. Basic attacks have a 10% chance to grant the ally 20% defense buff that lasts for 10 seconds. This can go up to a stack of 3, so that's 60% defense there. So she's basically not she's basically supporting the team in other ways and not just healing them. So she's going to be a very interesting support, and I think she's going to be a secondary support, not your main support. And if Violet's target is inflicted with a shock from her heavy attack, which is probably where you're going to be getting them from, her basics have a 35% chance to grant a defense buff. So essentially, you don't want to have any instance of where the enemy does not have a shock. But to be fair, you'll probably not be controlling her, so you won't have any control over this. And the shock will last 10 seconds, which is a pretty decent amount of time. The only problem I have here is we don't know if it stacks. So if you throw a shock, 5 seconds has passed. If you throw another heavy and reapply that shock, does the timer start again from 10 seconds? Because if it does start again from 10 seconds, she's going to work pretty well with an AI, because you would think that every 10 seconds the AI does throw at least one heavy. But she could be hurt by the AI the AI's incapabilities. But now moving on to her special ability. Her special ability is very interesting. So Violet grants a force field to all allies. So what is a force field? Force field is basically damage taken that won't affect your armor or your health. So as you can see, the strength of the force field is equal to 50% of Violet's defense. So as you can see, Violet's defense is 5,416. Divide that by 2, that is about 2,708. So basically she'll be taking 2,708 damage before she loses any health or armor, which is pretty good. And this is not to her, sorry, I probably misspoke there, but it's to her allies. I'm not sure if she also gains the force field, but that would be extra. That would be very nice. And force fields absorb basic and heavy attack projectiles that will last for 10 seconds until destroyed. So while a force field is active, the protected ally gains 100% resistance to shock and burn. So this is pretty good because she's a support that doesn't exactly heal. So damage over time effects may be a bit hurtful to a kit. And there's future content where this might be something that you need with certain guardians, such as Gaston, for example. He doesn't have these immunities, and you possibly need that damage, but you can't use them because of all those damage over time effects. But if you use it special, you'll be limiting those damage over time effects for 2/3 of the time, because there's a downtime of 5 seconds with this force field. And for the first 5 seconds, while a force field is active, it grants 2% armor, 2% armor per second. So essentially that's 10% armor, because it's for the first 5 seconds and not for the entire 10 seconds. So now moving on to her signature ability. Violet grants a force field to all allies at the start of each combat, and armor granted from the force field is increased by an additional 2%. So her signet is pretty, at level 1, is a pretty solid increase, because her special ability, instead of giving 10% armor, it actually gives 20% armor, which is pretty great because it's 4% every second for 5 seconds. Alright, and then the strength of Violet's force field is increased by an additional 50%. So this is obviously at level 100, as you can see by the underline. That means that's the scaling thing. So at 50%, that means 100% of the defense. So now at Astral 10, level 100 max, she's basically gonna allow the allies to take 5,416 damage without touching their health or armor, which is very insane. Now moving on to the talent, you got the standard 20% defense, but actually this could be pretty decent for Violet, because this would be an increase of 1080, no, or something but see 1800. I don't know, maths, it hurts my brain. So basically she'll be taking easily over 1000, but this is at max level, obviously level 10. So at level 10 she'll be able, so this 5000 will turn into 6000 or whatever it is, which is pretty insane. Her second basic is just attack, and her first advance is very interesting. This is her invisibility thing, which I was really hoping for, because if there wasn't any invisibility, it would have been weird, considering that's her entire power. Not her entire power, but one of her main powers. So once per encounter, while at or below 50% HP, Violet gains a 20% defense buff, which is pretty decent. But the interesting thing is she also gains an invisibility buff for 15 seconds, which basically greatly lowers enemy aggression towards her. So this is very, very similar to Aladdin's elite ability, and the fact that it lasts for 15 seconds is pretty huge, because 15 seconds you have enough time to throw a Violet special and possibly even another heal from another guardian, such as Jack Skellington, Mickey, or any other guardian apart from Stitch, but he's not really a support. So that is pretty good. So where was I? So now we're on to the second advance. I'm not really a big fan of this. I don't really think I'm going to be using this. It increases this critical damage debuff. It could possibly be useful, but I think this talent's going to be more useful when a force field is destroyed or expires. Enemies are inflicted with a shock, dealing 5% damage. Damage per second for 10 seconds. Shocks inflicted by other allies deal an additional 10% damage. So if you're running with Wooly, I'd probably use this talent. But if you're not, you might possibly want to use this talent just to tank even more damage. But her elite is definitely going to be used, because she's got a very, very good elite. When a force field is applied to an ally, adjacent enemies are knocked back, which is great. That's another way to basically counter special abilities. Allies resist 30% basic and heavy attacks damage from tank and melee enemies while force fields are active. So basically, if you've got Simba with Violet, Simba will be resisting 60% damage from basic and heavy attacks from tanks and melees. As you can see, I think, where was it from? I think, yeah, it was here. So he already resists 30%. So he then resists another additional 30%. So Simba and Violet are going to be pretty solid together. And also, he is going to have some, I think she'll be great with Mr. Incredible as well, because of all that armor gain, and plus he does a decent bit of damage, so you can run him, Violet, and a secondary support, which I would probably use Jack Skellington or Mickey, maybe even a Scrooge for extra damage, but I'd probably just stick to Jack Skellington and Mickey Mouse, and that could be a very, very solid team. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.